Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnLine. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner, who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. Also joining us is the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael Worldby Freer, who is a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 144, the Cleveland Cavalier and Oklahoma City Thunder episode, as both of the top 2 teams in the league this season reached exactly 44 wins before this year's All-Star break. One quick reminder before we get started, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion, with the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to NHL and UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one betting source, from every three-pointer to hat trick. BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And let's begin tonight, Bruce, with your hat that you're wearing for the viewers watching this on YouTube here. Tell us a little bit more about that hat you're wearing tonight.
I'm rocking my All-Star Weekend hat from 1996 in San Antonio, the Alamo Dome. Nice. Very special All-Star Weekend. Thank you. Very special All-Star Weekend for me. It was the first time I had a chance to, cross paths with someone who's become a lifetime friend and colleague, Tim Legler, who came out of nowhere and won the Long Distance Shootout that year. I believe he beat Dennis Scott in the finals, although I'm pretty certain that that's the case. And of course, Brent Barry won the slam dunk contest. So it was very memorable for me. And, I wanted to celebrate All-Star Weekend with something from a classic All-Star.
I love that. And let's get started talking about this All-Star Weekend and get to our recap here as it took place in San Francisco this past weekend. And first things first, fellas, what's your initial overall thoughts on how the weekend went, Bruce?
Overall, my time would have been better spent binge watching The Landman on Paramount Plus. What a total bore. The phony baloney tournament was a nice attempt by the NBA. I applaud that, to try something new, but it just didn't resonate with me. The All-Star game used to be so cool, right? But now it's like third in the coolness meter behind the Long Distance Shootout and the Slam Dunk Contest, which, by the way, also needs some improvement. If Sabrina and Steph had competed, or Sabrina and Caitlin, the All-Star game would have actually finished fourth.
Good point there. And also, we didn't get LeBron James or Anthony Edwards in the game. They were late scratches, which was very disappointing, as those are 2 guys that can definitely bring entertainment value to the game. World B, what were your thoughts?
Well, you don't want to poo-poo on the whole weekend, because it is a showcase for the NBA. It's supposed to be a showcase for the NBA, but that, it's turned from becoming one of those things where they dominate the weekend to what we had this weekend, where the commissioner is forced to try gimmicks to try and create some interest. And it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about the players wanting to compete. If they don't want to compete, this thing the weekend's just not going to work. And when did the in-season tournament that they started, when did that become for me, a watchable event? When the players started to care, when the players started to compete, when the players put an effort into this weekend, specifically around the All-Star game itself, then it becomes a more interesting thing. And then it becomes a must-watch, spend your weekend watching the NBA. Until that happens, it's just, as Bruce said, it was kind of a bore.
I wonder if there's a way to kind of juice up just the energy level of the weekend by maybe having the trade deadline move to something that either overlaps it or is very close to it. Because the whole talk, from what I understand, of the weekend was, the Luka AD trade, which happened 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
So, if there were like big moves like that, maybe that even could happen during All-Star Weekend. Maybe moving the deadlines. I don't know. Everything they try is going to be a gimmick, because as long as there's a game, the people got to be trying, or else it's not much of a game.
The problem with that, Bruce, I don't disagree necessarily as an idea. The All-Star game is so late in the season, really, because we're almost about 50 games in. To move the trade deadline back, these guys just aren't going to have a whole lot of time with their new teams. I don't, unless you move the All-Star game up or whatever you want to do. That's the only issue. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think the timing of it probably makes it illogical to work.
Yeah, and we'll be around those lines too. The fact Damian Lillard came out post-game and said, look, with how late the All-Star game is in the season, we've all about played 50 games so far if you include the preseason. A lot of people's bodies are wearing down, obviously, with the pace of play. I don't think that's an excuse. I think that those are some facts that need to be taken into consideration with this All-Star game. Maybe do we move it up a little bit just because, these guys do play 40-plus minutes a night being the superstars that they are. And with the pace of play these days, the kind of just the grueling schedule, it could play a factor in, the availability of guys like Anthony Edwards, LeBron, Giannis, and that's just a few examples.
The problem with that is you want to follow the Super Bowl is over. You don't want to compete with the NFL, and the NFL owns January. It owns the first week in February. And now after, this is the weekend, first weekend following football should belong to the NBA. I don't disagree. If you want to make it more halfway point of the season, you probably need to start the season in November, begin the season in November to cut out that first week of games, I would say. But no, I agree. I think it should be more at the midway point. I think I just don't see the way they have it designed, where it would fit in other than where they have it right now.
Yeah. Maybe they can put it where the in-season tournament is in Las Vegas. I mean, just have it after that, since there's only two teams that are standing at the end of that. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to kind of the recap of this weekend, starting out with the Rising Stars game. That was won by Candace Parker's Rising Stars, who defeated Team G League in the final game. And Kansas' squad was featured with players like Dalton Connect, Jalen Wells, and Zach Edey from the Grizzlies, Keontae George, Stephon Castle, Ryan Dunn, and Trace Jackson Davis, which secured the youngsters a spot in the competition during Sunday's All-Star game, which was a new facet in the big game on Sunday. And no matter how you felt about the overall weekend festivities, the one big takeaway I took from what they did with this was I think the exposure to a bigger and broader stage for these youngsters was a big win, especially the G League guys getting to play in that final game. I think that was one of the glass half full approaches I took to the weekend, is they did give some exposure to some of the youngsters. Would you guys agree?
Go ahead, World.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think what you see in that weekend in that game is, there's a lot more. We have the LeBrons, we have the Kevin Durants, we have the Steph Currys. They're all legends. There's a lot of quality young talent in this league right now that, you want to see who's going to be the one or two player that separates themselves and becomes the next guy among this group. I don't know if it's really there yet, but there's a lot of really young quality talent getting a lot of time on their respective teams, by the way. The Spurs starting, or the Grizzlies, starting two rookies on one of the best teams in the league is pretty impressive. So, yeah, it was a good showcase for the young talent. And as you mentioned, the G League guys getting to showcase their stuff was I think was a positive step. I agree with that.
I'm going to talk a little more about him in depth later, but a prime example of what you just described was Stephon Castle. Here's a guy who's playing in a relatively obscure market right now. I mean, it's coming up in the world, obviously. We know why. But a lot of people have not seen Stephon Castle, and now they've seen Stephon Castle, and they probably think, I like that Stephon Castle.
Yeah, he had a great performance throughout the entire weekend, as we'll talk about in just a bit. But one quick note I wanted to talk about with that G League team, one of the guys on that team was the third overall pick in last year's draft. That is Reed Sheppard. We all talk highly about Sheppard's game after Summer League, heading into the season with our predictions. And he's just kind of continued to underwhelm. I mean, just shot the ball poorly this past weekend. He's shot the ball poorly so far this season, even in the G League at times. So did we overhype this guy from over the summer, Bruce?
I wasn't as high on Reed Sheppard as certain other people were, mainly because I didn't see him play a ton. So I didn't really know whether I should like him or not. So, but it's always tough for rookies. I mean, it just is. I mean, maybe he's a late bloomer.
Yeah. Will be.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, he's young. He's only 20 years old. And we got to, I have to remember that every time I think about some of these guys. They're just young guys, and for Reed Shepherd, he's 20 years old, 1 year removed from high school, basically, and now I'm playing in professional basketball. So you take that into account. However, he's pretty undersized at 6'2", and he's not much of a passer. And so far, he's not much of a shooter. So he absolutely has work to do. He does. He just has work. And the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is, as well as the Rockets have done, as many great moves as they made, they got to be shaking their heads and going, "Oh, what did we do by passing on Castle at 4? Castle went number 4. They took Shepherd at 3. What a team the Rockets could potentially have with that group." Stephon Castle, by the way, is having such a quality season, not a over the top season, all-star season, but the Spurs would not include him in the trade with the Kings when they got De'Aaron Fox. How did the Kings get rid of De'Aaron Fox and not get Castle back?
Wild.
That's one of the biggest mysteries. And the Spurs have got to be just like singing praises over that, doing a dance over the fact that we just got De'Aaron Fox and we didn't have to give up Stephon Castle, who's looked like he's heading to be, as I mentioned, that guy out of the rookie group.
Yeah, and we missed a big opportunity there, as I mentioned before on this show. Every king needs a castle. So what was Sacramento thinking? I mean, come on. It would have been perfect if he was there in Sacramento. Now, moving on here, let's talk about the skills challenge that didn't come without any drama here. We had some major drama that took place here, but overall, the contest was won by the Cavs duo Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell, and the final round was certainly entertaining. It's safe to say that both the league office and NBA fans could have done without the Victor Wembanyama and Chris Paul antics in this one. Not sure if you guys caught that, but not attempting shots and just trying to shave time off the overall round didn't sit well with those in attendance or the players. I saw Donovan Mitchell give him the thumbs down on the bench when he saw what happened there. What were your guys' overall thoughts, having seen at least the highlights on that? Because they had Twitter buzzing. Bruce?
Well, the Spurs ran into the ethics police when they tried to exploit that loophole in the skills competition in order to finish with a better time. Now, usually when it's a team versus like the big corporate office, I usually take the team side in a dispute like that, but not this time. This time I'm totally on the league side. There is such a thing as the spirit of fair competition with everybody abiding by the rules. And even if San Antonio's idea was technically legal, it smelled bad. I know they're saying it was Wemby's idea. I call BS on that. That was Chris Paul's idea for sure, and he's making the rookie take the fall for it. I would bet money on that.
Wow, okay. World B?
Well, let's call it what it was. It was just a dumb, selfish move by these two. And, I don't care if it was Wemby's idea or Chris Paul's idea. If it was Wemby's idea, where's the leadership from Chris Paul, the great leadership to stand up and be a better representative and say, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
So whoever's idea it was, Chris Paul needed to step up and say, no, we don't do that. So The problem is the league didn't need that at this time. They needed a weekend that was as free of criticism as you could get, because they've been under the gun all season now, ratings and all. We hear, just a lot of negativity surrounding the league all of a sudden. And this did not help. That's just, at the end of the day, just did not help the perception of the weekend.
I know that nobody really bets on the skills competition, but stuff like this makes certain things pop up in your head. Like, if a competition like this can be compromised by some BS, aren't there other, and I'm putting money on a game and I'm expecting Chris Paul to do X and Y. I mean, that chips away to me at the integrity of the game, even though this was clearly an isolated incident. I get that. I don't know that it's indicative of a larger problem, but, people start thinking about that stuff and that chips away at your product, I believe.
Totally does. And you could have bet on the skills challenge and taken Victor Wembanyama and Chris Paul in that case. And how about the fans that paid top dollar to go to Saturday night's events? And many of them probably wanted to see Wemby. I mean,
absolutely,
it's a great opportunity to see him compete in something. They're disqualified after the first round and technically didn't really even take a shot since they never did. So such a bummer to see that take place. And I'm glad that they were disqualified and are getting the fair criticism that they're receiving now. Now, on a brighter note, let's talk about the 3-point competition. This was won by Heat sharpshooter Tyler Hero, barely defeating Buddy Hield in the final round, 24-23. To me, this was easily the best competition on Saturday night, as Buddy Hield did have a chance to secure the victory on the final rack, but just came up short against Hero's total. But I kind of wanted to focus on Tyler Hero for a second. I mean, you go back 2 off seasons ago, this guy was being dangled for an entire summer as part of the trade package to Portland for Damian Lillard. Of course, that didn't end up happening. You know, he kept a good attitude in Miami. He hasn't let the Butler situation that hasn't gotten to his head. He's embraced the role of being a leader on this team and makes his first All-Star team, wins the 3-point contest. So really good to see a guy like Tyler Hero kind of have karma in his back pocket right now. And couldn't have been happier for the guy. Although I will say, seeing Damian Lillard not win back home in the Bay, that would have been fun if he would have won that competition. But we got to be happy for Tyler Hero, don't we, World B?
Yeah, absolutely. He's being on that Heat team that we call it the counterculture this year. It's not the Heat culture, it's the Heat counterculture, the way things have developed this season. And yeah, he's had to rise above that. And on a team that's just had just been a dysfunctional mess at times, for him to get to the All-Star game for the first time, to be in this competition, to win it, and to win a good competition. Like you said, Buddy Hield came on the last 30 seconds really was draining him and had a absolutely serious shot to win that game, up to that contest, up until the last couple of shots there. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It is my favorite competition of the whole weekend, given the fact that we see more 3-pointers than ever before. So there's a very good chance you're going to get at least 2 quality shooters here in this competition for the event, and we did.
If Eminem had a son who was an NBA player, it would be Tyler Hero.
Nice. I like that.
Good job by Hero. Heat have a way of developing guys. Look, I mean, you kind of go through the fire when you play for that organization. It's not like the easiest organization to play for, but I believe in Heat culture. I really do. I think, they've shown over time that they develop guys, and, they're always a little better than you think they're going to be. And look, I'm glad, because after Hero's rookie year, man, they were treating that guy like a god. He was like the next coming. Then his stock went into the dumper for a couple years, and now this is sort of the beginning of his resurrection, I hope. So good for him.
Yep. And as we move on to the dunk contest here, once again, it was the Mac McClung show as he completed a 3-peat, winning his 3rd straight contest. And the honors were not given. They were absolutely earned in McClung's case. The amount of creativity and difficulty he's shown throughout his performance was top-notch. Of course, the top dunk had to be his sick dunk, jumping over the Kia. But he also mixed in around dunking 2 basketballs while jumping over someone who was spinning on a hoverboard, which was pretty cool as well. So do you think his performance, Bruce, is going to get others to want to challenge him for the title? I saw Ja Morant came out on Twitter and said, I'm tempted to do it now that McClung's putting on this type of show. Someone's got to stop this guy. Do you think we'll get some stars back in the mix, or do you have to believe it to see it, or see it to believe it? I'm sorry.
It's like he should get the Woody Harrelson White Man Can Jump Award because he's just, I haven't seen anything like this in the slam dunk contest since Spud Webb and Nate Robinson were really good at it. When a little guy, and he's not that little, but he's little compared to guys going against, it's just like 95% of the country was rooting for the guy. There's a handful of people that would never root for the guy, but the vast majority of people were rooting for the guy. And you're just kind of like, it's like, winning one for the underdog.
Yeah. And Will B, you're a Magic fan. So talk about Orlando Magic guard Mac McClung a little bit.
Well, he's a C-League superhero there. He's earned more. I think he's earned more in this competition than he has as an NBA player, if I saw the note correctly.
I believe that.
This is his historic event. I mean, historic achievement he's done. Nobody's ever won 3 in a row. And he's, like you said, he earned it. He didn't win by default. He came up with the dunks that nobody else could do. I mean, the dunk over the car arguably could be the greatest dunk in the history of that competition. I wouldn't put it there, but you could certainly make a case for it the way he did it. It's really an impressive story for a guy like that to come in, and you really wish he had enough game to last on an NBA team and really be a contributor there. So if he could shoot, the Magic should bring him up tomorrow. They need shooters. I don't know if he can shoot it out. They absolutely need shooters. If he can bring him up from Lakeland, Florida, there where the G League Magic G League team is located, and let him give him a shot.
I like it. And we teased it at the top here with Stephon Castle being mentioned throughout tonight's show, but he deserves a lot of credit too, because he was the clear second place finisher in this. He had some very impressive dunks as well throughout this one, and really got to show off that athleticism that even myself didn't really know he had. So I learned a lot from watching Castle dunk in the slam dunk contest.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Vince Carter in 2000 when he showed up for the one time in the All-Star and he dominated and the crowd went crazy. Also in San Francisco, I believe. Right. Exactly. And what people forget is Steve Francis had a great dunk contest. Tracy McGrady had a great dunk contest. But all everybody was going to remember is how great Vince Carter, deservedly so. He had some unbelievable dunks. So that's kind of how this worked out for Stephon Castle. He became the role player in this whole thing, despite having a good showing.
No doubt. Now with the All-Star Championship, that was won by Team Shaq OGs, which was a roster that featured James Harden, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, and Jaylen Brown. So 2 Celtics in the mix there, Bruce. But the final game was a snore fest with the final score of 41-25. Just not very competitive at all. Even that final basket, Tatum just laying it in, uncontested there in transition. I know many of us weren't too psyched for, we didn't have high expectations for the game, but overall, watching what I did of that, it wasn't very inspiring basketball.
Hey, when Steph pulled up from 48 and just buried it, and then the other one from the left, side, opens up, he just starts running back down court. That's why he won the MVP, because of those 2 shots. Otherwise it would have probably been Jason Tatum. But those were such show-stopping moments that deserved to win it. Plus his home court, one of his last years doing this. I mean, of course he should have won it.
Now my last thought here, and I'll start with you, will be, given the shots, I mean, those were the highlights of the night. Bruce just nailed it on the head there. And obviously Dame can pull up from that range as well. Do you think they should incorporate a 4-point shot or even maybe a 5-point? I mean, I don't know where it stops, but do you think that would help the game at all if they incorporated like extra points for range in this game to try to keep fans engaged?
No.
Okay.
It's simple work. No. When this game becomes more interesting is when, as I mentioned at the top, when the players are interested. If we're not asking the player. Here's the thing: we're not asking the players to put a regular season effort on the court. Although a guy like Kobe Bryant would have put an effort like that on the court. We're just asking for these guys to put, like, if they're in summer league, in a pickup game in summer league, put that effort against each other. This is not a game. It just isn't. It's not a competition, and they can try all the gimmicks they want, and hopefully one will stick, just because I want to see the NBA have some interest and have some positive, feedback coming off this weekend. But until the players want to care, this is just going to be a weekend of frustration.
I think it kind of bottomed out last year where they realized they had a huge problem. Because if you remember, I think there was a total of 3 free throws taken in the entire game by both teams combined. I mean, that's an embarrassment. That to me is like, it's just it was just a glorified layup line. Problem was they still got a little work to do tweaking what they're doing there. I think they'll figure something out, but this wasn't it.
What would be the problem? Do you think it would help if you did the world versus the US game?
Possibly.
Maybe. Yeah.
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 I don't know if the competition would be any more and it would increase the competition. But that's the only quote unquote gimmick I can see that may have an impact on making the guys want to play more. I don't know.
Because the Yanks might have trouble winning those games because you know
Absolutely.
what? When you look at who the MVP candidates are this year, the top 3 guys are all international players, right? Joker, Giannis, SGA. None of them are Americans.
And the best American players are on their, last legs here. We're being honest here between LeBron and Steph and KD here. You got Jason Tatum coming up. You got Jaylen Brown. There's some quality players for the U.S., but the biggest headliners are out the door almost.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I think even Anthony Edwards would have played Sunday if it was the world versus the U.S. in that case.
I just want guys to give a rat's behind about this game. That's all I want.
Yep. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break here and come back with the second half. And we're back here on 48 Minutes. Let's go ahead and get to our surprises and duds from our preseason predictions. We've gone back. We've rolled back the tape. We listened to some pretty entertaining hot takes of ours that some landed and a lot didn't. And Bruce, I'll go ahead and start with you. What was one of your big takeaways that you wanted to discuss here tonight?
All right. Well, I'm going to go a little bit out of order only because we were just talking about Stephon Castle and All-Star Weekend in the previous segment. So I want to talk about my Rookie of the Year preseason pick, which was Stephon Castle. I expected him to have a prominent role alongside Wemby and benefit from having Chris Paul as a teammate. And so far, I mean, he has not disappointed. I feel really good about this choice. He leads all rookies in points per game, and while others like Zachary Risachet, Alex Sarr, Jalen Wells are all nipping at his heels, Castle looks good. I mean, early on, Jared McCain of the Sixers looked to be the guy, but he's missed a ton of games. But in his favor, the Rookie of the Year candidates don't have to play 65 in order to qualify. So he could theoretically still be in the running, even if he doesn't reach 6, because he's not going to reach 65 games. We know that now. But I believe Castle's presence at All-Star Weekend, his MVP performance in the Rising Stars game, his great showing in the slam dunk contest, and just his overall footprint in the Bay definitely raised his profile. And I think he should definitely be the leader in the clubhouse at this point.
Yeah, I think that was a great call, Bruce. I think he will be the Rookie of the Year if I had to cast a vote here as of now. World B?
Yeah, I think he's I think I agree with Bruce. I agree with you. I think he is the clear-cut favorite at this point. He's the most impressive of all the rookies in this class. There are some that are they have moments. Alex Sarr has moments, but he's on a lousy team, and he's just, he's got to work on his shooting. There's just no other way around it. He has to become a better shooter. My choice was Zach Edey. I think he's still going to have a good season and a good career in this league. I just don't think he's going to win the Rookie of the Year. My choice, Luka, is not even on his team anymore for MVP. My MVP choice is gone. I think Wemby was an easy choice. I think we all had Wemby as Defensive Player of the Year. That wasn't hard. I'll be interested in the Most Improved Player award. We've talked about it before. I mentioned it in the preseason. It's the award that goes to the really good player who makes his first All-Star team. And this year, Wemby qualifies there, but he's going to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. I don't know if he's going to have enough to be the most improved player either, although he has improved his game from a year ago. I think that award is looking like it's going to be Jalen Williams of the Thunder. So, and the awards thing, I've really, I stunk.
Yeah. Well, I did too. I had T-John Saloon of Charlotte as my Rookie of the Year. I went off the beaten path, and I remain off the beaten path with that take there. But I did have Jalen Williams as the Most Improved Player award winner this year. Bruce, it's hard to argue that one, right? I mean, J-Dub has been phenomenal for OKC this year.
Yes, he has, but I was a believer in the Pistons heading into the season, and Cade Cunningham is absolutely their top dog. He fits the bill that you previously mentioned. Good player making his first All-Star game. Check that box for him. He's led the young Pistons into the top 6 in the East. They've more than doubled their win total from last season with 27 games left to play. He may not win the MIP award. I think Jalen Williams has an excellent chance. It will absolutely be one of these two guys, I believe. But I still feel, even if he doesn't win or he comes in second, he is incredibly, worthy of it.
He's definitely worthy, but Bruce, let me remind you, Cade Cunningham hasn't played center this year for his team. That's atop the Western Conference right now. But you definitely have an argument with Cade. I think he definitely deserves his flowers as well there. Any other picks that you reviewed, Bruce, that you wanted to mention here on tonight's show?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, MVP. I had Shai Gilgeous Alexander. I'm totally sticking with this. OKC is tied with Cleveland for the best overall record, as Russ mentioned at the very top of the show, 44-10 at this point. And look, he is an incredible two-way player. He is so much better defensively than I realized going into this season. I have been super impressed. And of course, his scoring speaks for itself. I mean, look, Chet Holmgren missed 41 games for OKC. And in those games, OKC was 34-7. And the reason can be spelled in 3 letters, SGA. So combined with voter fatigue about Nikola Jokic, who's won 3 of them already, continues his excellence. He's very worthy. But I believe SGA is a virtual lock to win the MVP, with Joker finishing second and probably Giannis third.
Yeah. Will B, do you disagree at all with that ranking right there from Bruce?
I think SGA is a quality choice. There's no question about it. He's a leading scorer on the best team. He's upped his game where you really didn't see him up in this game this much. You saw him as an MVP candidate before the season, and he's absolutely lived up to that. So it's hardly a crime of the century to put him in that category as MVP leader. I'm still going to. I know Joker isn't going to get it, but I think he can make absolutely a positive case given just how bad the Nuggets are when he is off the court. I talk about it all the time on our show. The numbers offensively when he is off the court, with the quality that they have, the lineup that they have around him, when he is off the court, their offense is terrible. And he's having the best season of his career. He's won 3 MVPs, and this is his best season in terms of numbers, the numbers say. So he's probably not going to win it because we all talk about voter fatigue. I get it. I'm just going to say, at the end of the season, if he averages a triple-double on a team like this, maybe he does deserve it again.
Yeah. Is their offense worse than the Orlando Magic when he's off the court?
Nobody's worse than the Orlando Magic. Let's not put Denver into that category. That's not fair.
Well,
ice cold stuff there, Ross. Really.
Yeah. Trying to get World B fired up on tonight's show. I think for my MVP pick, I had Luka, and that's not happening this year. As much as the trade to LA may help him out as far as kind of a motivation factor, given he was traded as the franchise player of the Dallas Mavericks, could help him in the long run, but it's definitely not going to help him this year with the injuries and everything that's gone on.
He just got off to a bad start too, by the way. If you remember, even before the injuries, which obviously derail him from really having a legitimate shot, he just got off to a lousy start. A terrible shooting start, and he finally got out of it. But yeah, he looked like the guy coming out of from last season, led his team to the finals, had everything going. And not only is he not the MVP, he's not even in Dallas anymore. That became the big story of the weekend. That's what everybody was talking about is Luka with the Lakers.
Yep.
Hey, Russ, can we talk about the coach of the year at one point here?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about them. I have some notes on that.
All right. So who do you think is going to win coach of the year?
Well, now I think it's going to be Kenny Atkinson. As I mentioned at the top, they've got 44 wins atop of the Eastern Conference. I don't think anyone saw them taking such a surefire lead over the Boston Celtics or New York Knicks in that regard at the top of the standings there, but they have just dominated this season. I had Jamahl Moseley at the beginning of the season, and I will say he got off to a tremendously impressive start with the Magic and had star players dropping like flies earlier in the season. And we really didn't see much of an effect. But, the momentum really lost steam as we neared the break for the Orlando Magic. They went 5-13 from January 7th up until February 11th. And that kind of killed all chances of Coach Moseley taking home the award. But I've got Atkinson right as of now. What about you?
Well, my preseason choice was Ime Udoka. And if Udoka doesn't win it, he can thank the Cavaliers, okay? Because the pace that they're playing at would put them at almost 67 wins if they keep it up, okay? That's historic territory there. As it is, the Rockets are also playing at a pace that would take them to almost 51 wins if they keep it up. But considering Houston's preseason over-under number was 43.5, they're going to surpass that easily. But since OKC's Mark Daigneault won it last year, Kenny Atkinson's going to get it this year, unless the Cavs completely collapse.
Yep.
Well,
I think it's Kenny Atkinson as well. I think he should be considered the move of the year by not taking the Hornets job for starters. Remember that he was the Hornets coach for about a week and realized did a U-turn on his way to Charlotte and head back to Golden State and wait for a better job to open up. And it opened up in Cleveland. And he really took a team that was pretty good. I mean, the Cavs were a pretty good team, and he took them to another level in just 1 year. And, they get a lot of credit for that. A lot of credit goes to him for that. I will say this. Let's see how the rest of the season plays out. If they go on a run here, Ty Lue of the Clippers deserves some serious consideration. We had the Clippers as the joke of the league. We talking before the season started. We talking about how they were going to be so bad they may end up losing their number one pick to the Thunder, who the Thunder could have conceivably had gotten the NBA title and the number one pick. It was that bad, we thought, for the Clippers. Well, they're the second best defensive team in the league now, and they're one of the top teams in a brutal Western Conference. And without Paul George, with James Harden on his last legs, with Kawhi Leonard just now coming back into the fold. They've done an outstanding job, and Ty Lue should get a ton of credit. He is in my top 3 coaches in the league, and I think if they go on a run here, if they can get the top 4 seed in the West, I know he's not going to get it, but he should absolutely finish no worse than runner-up.
Hey, Ross, do you think someone like JB Bickerstaff is a top 5 in this voting for that award this year?
I think he is. I think he'll be an honorable mention, especially given kind of the past history in Detroit and trying to get things back on track with that team. Obviously hiring Monty Williams from the Suns just a few years prior, thinking he was going to be the one that could figure it out. Even a coach that was highly regarded like Monty couldn't get it done. JB Bickerstaff obviously had success with Cleveland, was shown the door, and then goes to a place like Detroit and immediately sparks a flame within Cade Cunningham and the rest of the group. I mean, a lot of people forget too, Jaden Ivey was playing the best of his career before he went down with injury. So give him credit. Ivey was the thing that Monty Williams couldn't figure out. And not only could Monty not figure out Ivey, but obviously Cade wasn't playing at his best. JB was able to do both of those. I mean, he had both of those guys playing at a high level. Even without Ivey, they are continuing to click, and give credit to that front office, bringing over Malik Beasley. Tim Hardaway Jr. has played much better this year, and Asar Thompson's taken a step forward. Maybe not as much as his brother Amen, but he's definitely showing some positive growth there. So a lot of good development from JB and his staff in Detroit, and for sure he is a top 5 Coach of the Year candidate in my opinion. Now, last but certainly not least, Bruce, I want to talk about the finals predictions that we had. And I got to say, you and I both took the Celtics in Thunder. And well, that is still very much in play. At the midway point, I'm actually surprisingly more concerned about the defending champs' chances of returning to the finals than I am the Thunder's chances of making their first appearance since 2012. Would you agree with that?
Well, sure. I mean, there are definitely concerns there, but I'm still pretty comfortable with this prediction in spite of that. I mean, look, OKC has been the class of the West all season. And now that Holmgren is back, they could very well be a 65 to 68 win team. No lie. I mean, they really could. Now, Boston, of course, has been overshadowed, as you mentioned before, by Cleveland in the East. But in a 7-game playoff series, I'll still take Boston. I mean, a lot of people have been disappointed with their tendency to lose games they should have won, especially at home, where they're like 17-10. They're 22-6 on the road, best road record in the league. So, in spite of their lapses, and it's been really up and down, most people would agree this hasn't been a smooth sail for these guys. But even at their current pace, they're on pace for 58 wins, right?
Yeah.
That isn't far off from my preseason prediction of 60. So I'm going to stick with this prediction here. I mean, again, as always, got to hit April healthy,
Yeah.
Porzingis healthy, Boston could be good. But the same can be said for any top team.
Totally agree. And you got to keep Drew Holiday healthy as well. And I believe he was out as we neared the break. So hopefully he can get back to full health and we see the Celtics at full strength. Will be refresh my memory. Who was your finals prediction? And are you sticking with it like Bruce and I?
I don't want to say.
Oh, no.
I had Boston over Minnesota. Minnesota, they're not having a terrible season, really. They're just having a really inconsistent season. Nothing close to what they achieved a season ago when they made the Western Conference Finals. They were the best defensive team in the league. They made the big trade, picking up Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo and getting rid of Karl Anthony Towns, which has obviously benefited the Knicks much more than Minnesota. They still have a shot. Nobody thought Dallas was a serious contender for most of the season until, entering the playoffs, and they got on a roll there. It's still possible, but they have to get on a roll here at some point because they're having a good season. They're just not having a championship season.
Yeah, they've been one of the surprise teams as far as disappointment so far this season, but there's still time for them to turn things around. Well, we're going to take one last break here and come back with our second half predictions right after this. And we're back. And Bruce, I'll let you start us off here. I've been anxiously awaiting some second half predictions from both you and World B. So let's hear it.
All right. Well, hopefully we're going to allow a little time for this segment because there's a few things that I think are worth mentioning. But two teams that are just lurking in the West are the Nuggets and the Wolves. Both would give OKC a real battle in the Western Conference Finals. And don't try and sell me the Lakers. I'm not buying the Lakers as a Western Conference Final participant. Minnesota, they are starting their final stretch with 7 of their next 9 games on the road. But it's very possible that they might do well. If they're, say, 6-3 in these next 9 games, where 7 of them are on the road, it could push them into that next gear. And next Sunday and Monday, or this coming Sunday and Monday, they have a back-to-back with OKC. So we're going to learn a little bit about the Wolves. We're going to learn a little bit about the Thunder, although we kind of know them better than the Wolves at this point. But yeah, we can, and I want to talk a little about Denver too, but I don't want to just go on and on here. So someone else.
All right, World B, what do you got for us in the second half?
Well, here in the East, I'll say this. I don't think Boston's a lock anymore to come out of the East. And as Bruce mentioned, they do have the best road record in the league. So they don't necessarily need home court advantage to come out of the East. But their starting lineup, their regular starting lineup, is actually getting outscored on the court. They're getting outscored by almost 4 points per 100 possessions. That's a scary thing when if you're a Celtics fan looking at this team. You figure, hey, get everybody healthy, they'll be good to go. On the surface, that sounds good, but the numbers say it hasn't clicked yet. So we'll see how that goes. The Cavaliers are for real, but they still had 3 games left with the Knicks, including one on Friday against in Cleveland. So we'll see how they come out the rest of the season. The Knicks are a contender as well. So we'll see, how Cleveland looks after 3 games against the Knicks. They may look even better, or it may just be, the gap could be tightened between the Celtics and Knicks there if things work out. And in the East, I want to see how much Indiana and Milwaukee have in the tank. How much they have left in the tank, I should say. Now, the Pacers went 10-2 in January, but they're just 4-3 in February. And they had this great run, which made them look like, hey, maybe they can make some noise in the East. And now it's starting to show up. And the Bucks, when are the Bucks going to get going here? I mean, 3-6 in the last 9. We keep waiting for it. They get on a roll. They beat Minnesota right before the break without Giannis and Dame. But now they have, this huge road trip coming up where they have to play the Warriors, the Lakers, the Kings, the Suns, and the Nuggets. I mean, they don't come out with a winning record out of there. So, I mean, they're just going to be another first round and out team. And real quick in the West, all eyes are going to be on the Lakers, obviously, for the sideshow between Luka and LeBron. And I agree with Bruce. There's no front court help for this team until they address that. I don't see this as being that big of a deal, the trade. OKC's on cruise control. But as Bruce mentioned, they have 2 games against Minnesota that Minnesota just whooped them just right before the All-Star break, being by 15. You don't beat the Thunder very often by double digit. I think it's just the second time somebody's done that all year.
That was the largest loss for the Thunder.
So you just don't do that very often to OKC. OKC is still the best defensive team by a mile, so they have that going for them. And I mentioned a few minutes ago, let's see what the Clippers do the second half of the year. They've been really impressive to get to this point. They're the second best defensive team. Their defensive numbers, efficiency-wise, are better than the Timberwolves last season when the Timberwolves dominated the league defensively. And they're right there with the numbers. But they have a brutal road trip coming up here. They started with the Jazz right before the break, but they have 7 games in 13 days coming out of the break.
Oof.
Now, two of them are against the Lakers, so it's not like they're traveling far. But they are going. Maybe it'll take a long time to get across town. I don't know. The traffic.
A lot of traffic there.
So, if they can come out of that, let's see how they are coming out. But I want to see. They've turned me around. They were the joke before the season started, and they've kind of almost turned me around. As I want to see more of how this team does.
Yeah, good point there. We'll have to keep an eye on the LA Clippers moving forward. As for mine, the biggest hot take prediction I got that is almost a sad reality here in Phoenix is the Phoenix Suns, I think, will miss the playoffs entirely. They're currently 2 games below 500, 11th out west, on the outside looking in on the 10th and final play-in spot, as they're 1.5 games back from the Golden State Warriors, who just got a huge boost of energy, acquiring Jimmy Butler, who so far has looked pretty good in a Warriors uniform and definitely brought a spark to them. And the Suns have the toughest remaining schedule in the entire NBA. With 20 games left, they're set to face the Celtics twice, the Grizzlies twice, both the Cavs and Thunder once, the Knicks in New York, and the Nuggets in Denver, just to name a few there. And it's going to be rough. And the fact that Brad Beal is injured, sitting on the bench now, wasn't traded, didn't want to be traded. Obviously, Suns fans, unfortunately, have been giving him and his family a rough time at home games as he's being heckled. Kevin Durant has come out in public. He said, hey, I expect I might be traded this summer. So there's whispers going on that, obviously he was shocked at the deadline. He understands it's a business, but still just not great for the morale of that locker room, knowing KD might be out the door this summer. Brad Beal didn't want to be traded. Now Suns fans hate him. There's just a lot of negativity right now. And for a team that really has no time for negativity and has to figure things out, I just don't know if they can get it together in time. I mean, a lot of the same questions Will B had as we all did with the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, when are the Suns going to figure it out? I mean, they've had some stretches, but for the most part, it's been mediocre at best. And quite surprisingly, given the star-studded rosters that they have and those 3 guys.
Well, okay, so you mentioned Denver there. I just want to say something real quick about them and then something really, really quick about Memphis. Denver is a team that I think will find a way to peak at the right time. They've got a tough east of the Mississippi road trip coming up next week where they visit Indiana, Detroit, Milwaukee, and Boston, okay? And that Pistons game is the second night of a back-to-back with Indiana the night before. So that could be a bit of a trap game. We'll see how they do in a back-to-back against a pretty tough Pistons team. A 3-1 or 4-0 trip would be a real statement by Joker and his crew, and I would not rule that out. And then there's Memphis. I'm just not ready to fully trust Memphis. I'm really not. Here's why. Their winning percentage when Ja Morant doesn't play is .727, 16-6. When he does play, it's .625, 20-12. Now, don't get me wrong. .625 ball is outstanding, but it's not elite.
Yeah. Yeah. The Memphis Grizzlies are a scary team, though, because you never know what you're going to get with that young group that puts up the most points in the NBA. As for Denver, they got to get Russell Westbrook back healthy. He was out the last couple of games before the break. They just got Aaron Gordon back, which is actually huge for that team. I mean, obviously, depth is not one of their strengths, and Aaron Gordon obviously helps them out tremendously on the defensive side of the ball. So lots to look forward to in both the Western and Eastern Conference moving forward. And this was a lot of fun, kind of making some more second half predictions. I'm sure we'll come back to this in the offseason and see how we did. But with that, that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.